I gave a billionaire the hardest choice of his life: keep his fortune or choose me. What he did next shattered everything I thought I knew about love, money, and what really matters. This is my story, and trust me, you'll never see it coming. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because this story will change how you think about relationships forever. And stick around until the end. I have something special for everyone who makes it through. My name is Maya, and I'm about to tell you the most unbelievable love story you've ever heard. I was 28, living in Atlanta, working as a marketing executive by day, and picking up whatever side gigs I could find by night. You see, I wasn't just working for myself. I was the one my family counted on, helping with my little brother's college tuition, sending money home to my mum, trying to keep everyone afloat while barely staying above water myself. Dating, let's just say my love life was about as successful as a chocolate teapot. Every guy I met either couldn't handle that, I was more focused on my family than planning weekend getaways, or they'd disappear the moment they realized I wasn't available every Friday night because I was working a second job. I'd started to believe that maybe successful, ambitious women like me were just meant to choose between love and everything else we cared about. Then came that Saturday in March that changed absolutely everything. My friend called me last minute. Some fancy charity event in Manhattan needed extra catering staff, and the pay was too good to pass up. I threw on my black dress, tied my hair back, and took the train up from Atlanta, thinking this was just another gig to help me make rent. The moment I walked into that ballroom, I knew I was out of my league. Crystal chandeliers, women in dresses that cost more than my car, men in suits that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I was refilling champagne glasses, trying to blend into the background, when I looked across the room and saw him. This man standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, and I swear, time just stopped. He had this quiet confidence about him, like he belonged everywhere and nowhere all at once. Our eyes met, and something electric passed between us, something I'd never felt before in my entire life. I was so lost in that moment, staring at this mysterious man across the room, that I completely forgot I was holding a tray of red wine. 1 second, I'm having what felt like a movie moment. The next second, I'm bumping straight into him as he walked toward me. The entire tray went flying, and I watched in absolute horror as deep red wine splashed all over his pristine white shirt and what was obviously an incredibly expensive suit. My heart dropped to my stomach. I was mortified. Here I was, already feeling out of place, and now I'd just destroyed some rich guy's outfit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. I started apologizing frantically, grabbing napkins, ready to either burst into tears or run straight out of that ballroom. But then something completely unexpected happened. He started laughing. Not the angry, sarcastic kind of laugh you'd expect, but genuine, warm laughter that made his whole face light up. "Well," he said, looking down at his wine-stained shirt, "I guess this gives me the perfect excuse to get out of this stuffy event." His voice was smooth, kind, nothing like the entitled attitude I was bracing myself for. Instead of being furious, he was asking if I was okay, if I'd gotten hurt in the collision. This man had every right to be angry, but instead he was concerned about me. What was supposed to be a quick apology turned into 3 hours of the most incredible conversation I'd ever had. We talked about everything: books, travel dreams, family, what we wanted out of life, everything except what he did for work. Every time I asked about his job, he'd smoothly change the subject. I figured he was just another corporate guy who was probably bored by his 9 to 5. When he asked for my number, he simply said, "I'm Vincent," and somehow I forgot to ask for his last name. Our first real date was at this tiny coffee shop in Brooklyn that I'd discovered during one of my catering gigs. I was honestly testing him. Would this well-dressed man from the charity gala be willing to sit in a place where the chairs didn't match and the barista knew everyone's name? Not only did Vincent show up, but he spent 2 hours asking the owner about the fair trade coffee beans and chatting with regulars like he'd been coming there for years. That's when I knew he was different. Every date after that was the same. Food trucks in Central Park, little jazz clubs in Harlem, walking tours through neighborhoods most people his age wouldn't even know existed. Vincent had this incredible way of making the ordinary feel magical. He'd listen to me talk about my work, my family, my dreams of maybe starting my own marketing firm someday, and he'd hang on every word like I was revealing the secrets of the universe. But looking back now, there were signs I chose to ignore. His watch probably cost more than my car, though I told myself maybe it was a family heirloom. He always insisted on paying for everything, even when I tried to split the bill, brushing off my protests with that charming smile. His phone would buzz constantly during our dates, important-sounding calls he'd step away to take, always apologizing but never explaining. The thing was, I was falling hard. Vincent wasn't just handsome. He was genuinely kind, incredibly smart, and he made me laugh until my sides hurt. When I finally introduced him to my family, after 6 weeks of dating, my mum pulled me aside and whispered, "Maya, honey, this one's special. He looks at you like you're the only person in the room." And that's exactly how he made me feel, like I was his whole world. 3 months into what felt like the perfect relationship, curiosity finally got the better of me. I was at work during my lunch break, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when I realized I'd been dating this incredible man for months and didn't even know his last name. It felt silly, almost embarrassing, so I did what any modern woman would do. I decided to do some light internet stalking. I started with Vincent New York, then tried Vincent charity events, getting more and more specific with each search. Then I remembered the name of the investment firm I'd seen on some documents he'd accidentally left in his car. I typed Vincent plus the company name, and my world completely shattered. Vincent Hamilton. Net worth, $2.8 billion. CEO and founder of Hamilton Enterprises. I sat there in my tiny office cubicle, staring at photo after photo of the man I'd been sharing food truck meals with, except in these pictures, he was on red carpets, shaking hands with world leaders, accepting awards I'd never even heard of. There were articles about his penthouses, his private jet, his art collection worth more than most people's houses. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The man who'd been splitting pizza slices with me and riding the subway was one of the richest people in America. But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was the lies. Every conversation where I'd worried about impressing him, every time I'd felt insecure about my simple life, every moment I'd wondered if I was good enough for him, and he'd been living this completely different existence. That evening, when Vincent showed up at my apartment with takeout from our favorite Thai place, I confronted him. "Vincent Hamilton," I said, crossing my arms. "Really?" The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. The man I'd fallen in love with had been hiding the biggest part of his life from me. After Vincent explained why he'd hidden his wealth, how every previous relationship had been about his money, not him, I made the choice to give us a real chance. But nothing could have prepared me for what stepping into his world actually meant. One day I'm taking the subway to work, the next I'm in a private jet heading to dinner in Paris, because Vincent thought I'd enjoy this little restaurant he knew. It was overwhelming, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. The fancy restaurants, designer dresses that appeared in my closet, 5-star hotels. It was like living in a dream. But the real challenge wasn't adjusting to luxury, it was dealing with his social circle. The first charity gala Vincent took me to as his official girlfriend, I felt every pair of eyes in the room examining me. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, practiced my small talk, but nothing prepared me for the whispered conversations that followed us around the room. "She's certainly different from his usual type," I heard one woman say, behind her champagne glass. "I wonder what she does for work," another added with a tone that made it clear she already had her assumptions. The worst part wasn't just being dismissed as a gold digger, It was the subtle, sometimes not so subtle racial undertones. The surprised looks when I spoke articulately about business or current events. The way conversations would awkwardly shift when I joined a group. The patronizing questions about where I was really from. But Vincent never left my side. When someone made a snide comment, he'd address it directly. When people excluded me from conversations, he'd redirect the entire discussion to include me. He started declining invitations from people who couldn't respect me, choosing smaller gatherings with genuine friends who welcomed me with open arms. Instead of driving us apart, these challenges brought us closer together. I saw who Vincent truly was when the pressure was on. 6 months into our relationship, I got the phone call that changed everything. My mum's voice was shaking as she told me the doctors had found something during her routine checkup. She needed surgery, major surgery, and even with insurance, we were looking at bills that would bankrupt my entire family. I sat on my bathroom floor after that call and cried harder than I had since I was a child. When I told Vincent, his immediate response was exactly what I'd expected and exactly what I'd dreaded. "I'll take care of it," he said without hesitation. "The best doctors, the best hospital, whatever she needs." He was already reaching for his phone, probably to call someone who could arrange everything within hours. His generosity was genuine, his love for me clear, but something inside me just snapped. "No," I said, and the firmness in my own voice surprised me. "This is my family, my responsibility." Vincent looked at me like I'd lost my mind. We argued for hours, him insisting that helping the people I loved was natural when you had the resources, me trying to explain that I needed to know I could handle my own life without his money solving every problem. That's when I said the words that would either save or destroy our relationship. "Vincent, I need you to choose between your money and me." The silence in the room was deafening. "I need to know that you'd give it all up to be with me. Because right now, I feel like I'm dating your bank account, not you. I need to know who you really are when you strip away all the billions and the power and the lifestyle. Would you choose a simple life with me over everything else you have?" The look on his face told me I'd just asked him to make an impossible choice. Vincent stared at me for what felt like forever after I gave him my ultimatum. I could see him processing my words, trying to understand how we'd gotten to this impossible crossroads. Finally, he said quietly, "I need time to think," and walked out of my apartment. The sound of my door closing behind him was the loneliest sound I'd ever heard. For 48 hours, my phone was silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. I convinced myself I'd lost him. I'd pushed too hard, asked for too much. Who was I to demand that someone give up billions of dollars? Maybe I was being unreasonable. Maybe I was self-sabotaging the best thing that had ever happened to me. I barely slept, barely ate, just replayed our conversation over and over, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Then, on Thursday morning, there was a knock at my door. Vincent stood there holding a thick folder of legal documents, and I braced myself for the worst. Was this some kind of settlement? A goodbye gift? But when he opened that folder, my world tilted on its axis again. "I'm liquidating 70% of my assets," he said simply. "Keeping enough to live comfortably, but giving the rest to charity. I've already started the paperwork." I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. He continued, "But Maya, I realized something over these past 2 days. You weren't really asking me to choose between money and you. You were testing whether I love you more than I love the security and power that money gives me." He stepped closer, taking my hands in his. "The answer is yes. I love you more than all of it. But more importantly, I want to be the kind of man who deserves your love, with or without the billions." Vincent didn't end up giving away 70% of his wealth. I stopped him before he could complete the paperwork, because seeing those documents, seeing that he was willing to do it, that was all I needed to know. It wasn't about the money, and it never had been. It was about understanding what he valued most, what he was willing to sacrifice, and who he chose to be when everything was on the line. The real revelation came when he explained his perspective. Maya, I've spent my whole adult life building this empire, but I've never had anything worth protecting more than what I'd built. You changed that. You became more valuable to me than everything I'd accumulated. That's when I understood that my ultimatum wasn't fair. It was necessary. We both needed to know where we stood. 6 months later, we're planning the simplest, most beautiful wedding you could imagine. Not because we can't afford extravagance, but because we've learned that the most meaningful moments happen when you strip away everything unnecessary and focus on what really matters. Vincent still runs his company, but he's restructured his life around our relationship. He's learned to leave work at work, and I've learned to accept help without losing my independence. My mum's surgery went perfectly, by the way. Vincent insisted on covering it, and I let him, not because I couldn't figure out another way, but because I finally understood that letting someone you love help you isn't weakness, it's partnership. Here's what I learned. True wealth isn't about how much money you have. It's about finding someone who sees your value beyond what you can provide them. Someone who chooses you over everything else they could have. Vincent didn't just offer to give up his billions. He showed me that I was worth more to him than all of it combined. And that, honestly, is the richest feeling in the world. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. What would you have chosen, love or money? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that will make you believe in love again. Until next time, remember, you're worth more than gold.